The alien transport ship Zephyr's Edge hummed through the void between star systems, its cargo hold filled with the usual collection of smugglers, pirates, and other criminals destined for the prison colonies of Kepler 442b. Among them sat a human woman, her hands bound with energy shackles that glowed a dull orange against her dark skin. Captain Vextar, a 7-foot-tall Krillian with chitinous armor plating and 4 arms, reviewed the manifest on his datapad. The human had been caught trying to infiltrate a Galactic Federation military outpost, claiming to be some sort of elite Earth warrior called a Navy SEAL. The Federation investigators had laughed at her story. Humans were barely a decade into galactic society, their military technology primitive compared to the advanced civilizations that had ruled space for millennia. Another delusional human, muttered Lieutenant Chorus, the ship's reptilian second in command. They always think they're more impressive than they actually are. The woman, who called herself Sarah Chen, sat quietly in the corner of the holding area. She hadn't spoken much during the 3-day journey, spending most of her time doing strange exercises that looked like some form of meditation. The other prisoners gave her a wide berth, something about her calm demeanor making them uneasy. What the alien crew didn't know was that Sarah had been carefully studying the ship's layout, memorizing guard rotations and testing the limits of her restraints. The energy shackles were impressive by human standards, but she had encountered similar technology during her classified missions in the Outer Rim territories. More importantly, she had been trained to escape from far worse situations. Captain Vextar approached her cell, his 4 eyes studying her with curiosity. "Tell me, human, what made you think you could fool a Federation security checkpoint? Your people have been part of the galactic community for such a short time. What could you possibly know about real military operations?" Sarah looked up at him, her dark eyes steady and unblinking. "I never said I was trying to fool anyone. I told them exactly what I was." The captain's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. "A Navy SEAL. Yes, we looked up your human military units. Impressive for a primitive water world, perhaps, but hardly threatening to civilizations that have been waging war among the stars for thousands of years." "Is that what you think?" Sarah asked quietly. Something in her tone made Vexistar pause. He had been a military officer for over 60 years, had served in 3 different galactic conflicts, and had developed an instinct for recognizing dangerous individuals. This human woman, despite being restrained and seemingly helpless, radiated a quiet confidence that reminded him of the most lethal soldiers he had ever encountered. The ship's communication system crackled to life. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Federation Command," announced the communications officer. Vextar reluctantly turned away from Sarah, but not before noticing something that made his blood run cold. As the human had shifted position, her sleeve had pulled up slightly, revealing the edge of what appeared to be a tattoo on her forearm. It was only visible for a moment, but the captain's enhanced vision had caught enough detail to recognize the symbol. It was a trident, surrounded by an anchor and eagle, rendered in precise black ink. But it wasn't just any tattoo. The design included specific elements that Vextar had only seen once before, during a classified briefing about Earth's most elite military units. Elements that were supposedly known only to the highest levels of Federation intelligence. As he walked toward the bridge, Vextar's mind raced. The Federation had been monitoring Earth's military development closely since humanity's admission to the galactic community. They knew about the Navy SEALs, of course, but the official report suggested they were nothing more than aquatic assault troops, specialized for operations on their homeworld's vast oceans. But the briefing Vexitar had attended suggested something different. There had been whispers of human special forces operating in deep space, of missions so classified that even Federation Command wasn't fully aware of their scope. The intelligence officer who had given the briefing had seemed nervous, unusual for someone of his rank and experience. Sarah Chen watched the captain leave, noting the change in his body language. She had deliberately let him see part of her tattoo, knowing that someone of his obvious experience might recognize its significance. It was a calculated risk, but she needed to plant seeds of doubt about who she really was and what she was capable of. The truth was far more complex than the simple story of a woman caught impersonating a military officer. Sarah was indeed a Navy SEAL, but not the kind that appeared in any official records. She was part of a black operations unit that didn't officially exist, trained for missions and environments that most humans couldn't even imagine. Her capture had been intentional, part of a larger operation that required her to be exactly where she was right now. As the Zephyr's Edge continued its journey toward the prison colonies, Sarah began the next phase of her mission. The energy shackles that bound her wrists contained a sophisticated locking mechanism, but they hadn't been designed to contain someone with her particular set of skills. Years of training in exotic environments had taught her techniques that went far beyond what any galactic civilization expected from a primitive human. The other prisoners watched nervously as she began what appeared to be simple stretching exercises. They couldn't see the subtle manipulations she was performing on her restraints, or the way she was testing the structural integrity of her cell's containment field. To them, she was just another captured criminal trying to stay in shape during the long journey. But Captain Vextar, standing on the bridge and staring out at the stars, couldn't shake the image of that tattoo from his mind. Something about this human woman didn't add up, and his decades of military experience were screaming warnings that he was beginning to think he should have heeded much earlier. Captain Vextar couldn't concentrate on the navigation reports. The image of that tattoo burned in his memory like a brand. He dismissed his bridge crew and sealed himself in his private quarters, activating the highest level of encryption before accessing his personal files. The classified briefing had taken place 2 years ago on Proxima Station, a meeting so secret that all attendees had been required to submit to memory scans afterward to ensure no unauthorized recordings existed. Vextar had been selected because of his exemplary service record and his upcoming assignment to transport duty in the Outer Rim territories. The Federation intelligence officer, a pale Arcturian with silver eyes, had spoken in hushed tones about anomalous human activities in deep space. Reports of individuals who shouldn't have possessed the technology or knowledge to survive in certain environments, yet somehow not only survived but completed objectives that seasoned galactic operatives had failed to achieve. "We believe," the intelligence officer had said, "that Earth's government has been less than completely honest about their military capabilities. These Navy SEALs appear to be far more than the aquatic assault troops described in their official documentation." The briefing had included images of recovered equipment, technology that seemed to blend human engineering with principles that shouldn't have been known to Earth scientists. Most disturbing were the reports of humans operating successfully in environments that would kill most galactic species within minutes. Now, staring at his private files, Vextar found what he was looking for. A grainy surveillance photo taken on the mining station Kepler 438c, showing a figure in an environmental suit performing what appeared to be sabotage operations. The suit's design was unmistakably human, but it incorporated shielding technologies that the Federation had classified as beyond Earth's current capabilities. More importantly, when the figure had been briefly captured on a security camera, a portion of their forearm had been visible through a tear in the suit's fabric. The tattoo was clearly visible, a trident, anchor, and eagle, with the same specific design elements he had just seen on Sarah Chen's arm. Vextar's 4 hands trembled as he accessed another file, this one containing the complete intelligence briefing. The Arcturian officer had been clear about the implications. If humans possessed advanced special forces units operating covertly throughout galactic space, it meant Earth was playing a far more sophisticated game than anyone had realized. The concerning aspect, the intelligence officer had continued during that briefing, is not just that these individuals exist, but that they appear to have access to technology and training that suggests outside assistance. Someone has been helping Earth develop capabilities that should have taken them centuries to achieve on their own. Meanwhile, in the cargo hold, Sarah was making careful progress with her restraints. The energy shackles were indeed sophisticated, but their design reflected standard galactic thinking about security. They were built to contain individuals who would attempt to break them through brute force or conventional technological manipulation. They weren't designed to contain someone who had been trained in techniques developed specifically for dealing with exotic alien technologies. Sarah's unit had been equipped with knowledge that went far beyond what Earth's official first contact teams had been given access to. Someone in the human government had been preparing for possibilities that weren't supposed to exist. The other prisoners had gradually moved away from her as she worked. Her movements were subtle, but there was something unsettling about the way she seemed to understand technologies that should have been completely foreign to her. A Krillian smuggler named Zekorth, who had been watching her with professional interest, finally approached. "You're not what you seem," he said quietly. "I've been in this business for 30 years and I've never seen anyone work restraints like that." Sarah looked up at him, assessing whether he represented a threat or an opportunity. "What makes you think I'm working on anything?" Zekorth's mandibles clicked softly. "Because those shackles have been getting dimmer for the last hour, and you're doing something with micro-movements that's affecting their power systems. The question is, what are you really and what happens when you get free?" "That depends," Sarah replied, returning to her subtle manipulations. "Are you planning to cause problems or are you smart enough to stay out of the way?" The smuggler studied her for a long moment. He had seen many dangerous individuals during his criminal career, but this human woman possessed a quality he had only encountered in a few beings: absolute certainty in her own capabilities. It was the mark of someone who had been tested in situations that most people couldn't survive. "I'm smart enough to recognize when I'm in the presence of a predator," Zekorth said quietly. "The question is whether you're hunting the crew or something else entirely." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Vexitar's voice filled the cargo hold, but there was a tension in it that hadn't been there before. "All prisoners will remain in their designated areas. Any attempt to move beyond the marked boundaries will result in immediate pacification. This announcement is being made for your own safety." Sarah smiled grimly. The captain was beginning to understand that something was wrong, but he didn't yet grasp the full scope of the situation. Her mission parameters had accounted for this possibility. In fact, having the crew on alert might actually make the next phase easier. Back in his quarters, Vextar was reviewing personnel files for his entire crew. If this human woman was what he was beginning to suspect she was, then her presence on his ship was not the result of a simple arrest. Advanced operatives didn't get captured by accident, which meant she was exactly where she wanted to be. The implications were staggering. If Sarah Chen was a member of one of Earth's black operations units, then her capture and transport to the prison colonies was part of a larger plan. But what could humans possibly want with a penal colony in the Outer Rim territories? Vextar activated his ship's defensive systems and sent a coded message to Federation Command requesting immediate backup. Whatever was happening, he was beginning to realize that his cargo transport had become something much more dangerous. A delivery system for one of the most lethal individuals in known space. As the Zephyr's Edge continued through the void, 2 separate countdowns were running. Captain Vexitar was racing to understand the true nature of his situation before it was too late to control it. Sarah Chen was methodically dismantling the last of her restraints while calculating the optimal timing for the next phase of her mission. Neither of them knew that they were both running out of time faster than they realized. The response from Federation Command came faster than Captain Vextar had expected, and it wasn't what he wanted to hear. The encrypted message was brief and ominous. "Maintain current course. Do not deviate. Do not engage with prisoner designation HC7739. Reinforcements en route to intercept at Kepler 442b." Vextar stared at the message, his forearms trembling with a combination of fear and anger. The Federation knew exactly who Sarah Chen was, and they had deliberately allowed her to be placed on his ship without warning him of the danger. He was being used as an unwitting courier for something far beyond his security clearance. In the cargo hold, Sarah felt the final restraint mechanism give way. The energy shackles powered down with a soft hiss, but she kept them in place, maintaining the illusion that she was still securely bound. Her internal chronometer told her that they were approximately 6 hours from the prison colony, which meant she needed to accelerate her timeline. The other prisoners had noticed something was happening. Zekorth, the Krillian smuggler, was watching her with obvious nervousness. A group of reptilian pirates in the corner had stopped their constant chatter and were studying her with the wariness of predators sensing a larger threat. "Whatever you're planning," Zekorth whispered, "you need to know that this ship has automated defense systems. The moment you move outside your designated area, plasma turrets will activate." Sarah looked at him with what might have been amusement. "How do you know about the plasma turrets?" "Because I helped install them," the smuggler admitted. "Before I turned to crime, I was a security systems engineer. Captain Vextar hired my company to upgrade this ship's defenses 5 years ago. This was useful information." Sarah had already identified the locations of most of the ship's defensive systems through careful observation. but having confirmation from someone who had worked on them would save valuable time. "Tell me about the command protocols," she said quietly. Zekorth's mandibles clicked nervously. "Why would I help you? For all I know, you're planning to kill everyone on this ship." "If I wanted everyone dead, they'd already be dead," Sarah replied matter-of-factly. "I need information because I'm trying to minimize casualties, not maximize them." There was something in her tone that convinced the smuggler she was telling the truth. He had spent enough time around killers to recognize the difference between someone who enjoyed violence and someone who used it as a precise tool. "The plasma turrets are controlled by the ship's central AI," he said reluctantly. "But there's a manual override station in the engineering section. If someone could access it without triggering the proximity sensors." "Where exactly in engineering?" Sarah asked. Zekorth described the location in detail, along with the access codes that would be needed to shut down the defensive systems. As he spoke, Sarah was already formulating her approach. The route to engineering would require her to move through 3 separate sections of the ship, each with its own security measures. On the bridge, Lieutenant Corius was reviewing the tactical display when he noticed something unusual. "Captain, I'm detecting minor power fluctuations in the cargo hold. It might be nothing, but..." Vexitar was at his side in an instant. "Show me." The display revealed subtle variations in the energy output of the prisoner restraint systems. Most of the fluctuations were normal, but one set of readings showed a pattern that didn't match standard system behavior. "Prisoner HC-7739, Corius said, highlighting the relevant data. "Her restraints are showing intermittent power variations that suggest possible tampering." Vexitar felt his worst fears being confirmed. "Activate full security monitoring. I want constant visual surveillance of that prisoner, and alert me immediately if she moves even a centimeter outside her designated area." What the captain didn't know was that Sarah had been waiting for exactly this response. Increased surveillance would actually help her by providing real-time information about the crew's locations and alert status. Her training had included techniques for using an enemy's own security systems against them. Sarah stood up slowly, letting the deactivated shackles fall to the floor. The sudden change sent a ripple of tension through the other prisoners, some of whom scrambled to get as far away from her as possible. Zekorth stared at the fallen restraints in disbelief. "That's impossible. Those shackles are rated to hold a Krillian warrior." "They're well designed," Sarah agreed, rolling her shoulders to work out the stiffness from hours of confinement. "But they were built by people who don't understand human physiology or capabilities." On the bridge, alarms began blaring as the surveillance system registered that prisoner HC-7739 was no longer secured. Captain Vexitar watched in horrified fascination as Sarah moved through the cargo hold with fluid grace, completely ignoring the automated warnings demanding that she return to her restraints. "Activate the plasma turrets," he ordered. "Sir, there are other prisoners in the area," Lieutenant Corius warned. "Federation protocols require..." "Override the protocols," Vexitar snarled. "That human is more dangerous than all the other prisoners combined." But when the plasma turrets emerged from their concealed positions, they found no target. Sarah had already moved beyond their firing arcs, using the cargo containers and other prisoners as cover while she made her way toward the exit. The other prisoners were in full panic now, scrambling for cover as the automated systems swept the area with targeting lasers. Several of them shouted accusations at Sarah, blaming her for bringing this danger down on all of them. Sarah paused at the cargo hold exit, looking back at Zekorth. "Stay down and stay quiet. This will be over soon. What are you really?" the smuggler called after her. Sarah smiled grimly as she disappeared into the corridor. "I'm the reason humans don't need to be afraid of the dark anymore." In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Morgath was working on routine maintenance when the security alerts began flooding his workstation. A human prisoner had somehow escaped from restraints that should have been impossible to break, and was now moving through the ship with apparent knowledge of its layout. The Arcturian engineer activated the emergency lockdown protocols, sealing blast doors throughout the ship and activating additional security measures. But even as he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was already several steps behind whatever plan the human had set in motion. Sarah moved through the ship's corridors like a shadow, avoiding the obvious surveillance points while using maintenance passages and service ducts that weren't covered by the security grid. Her route to engineering was longer than necessary, but it kept her invisible to the increasingly frantic crew members who were searching for her. As she reached the final corridor before the engineering section, Sarah paused to check her internal chronometer. Everything was proceeding according to schedule, but the most dangerous part of her mission was still ahead. She needed to reach the manual override station and disable the ship's defenses before Captain Vextar realized what she was really trying to accomplish. The truth was that the prison colony wasn't her destination at all. The Zephyr's Edge was. Chief Engineer Morgath never saw Sarah coming. One moment he was frantically trying to trace her movements through the ship's security grid, and the next moment she was standing behind him, having emerged from a maintenance shaft that, according to the ship's blueprints, should have been too small for a full-grown humanoid to navigate. "Please step away from the console," Sarah said, quietly. The Arcturian engineer spun around, his silver eyes wide with shock. He reached for the emergency alert button, but Sarah's hand was already on his wrist, applying pressure to a nerve cluster that instantly paralyzed his arm. "I don't want to hurt you," she continued in the same calm tone. "I need access to the manual override station and then I'll be out of your way." Morgath stared at her in disbelief. "You're human. Your species doesn't know anything about Arcturian neural pressure points." "You'd be surprised what my species knows," Sarah replied, guiding him away from the console with gentle but irresistible force. "Sit down and stay quiet. This will be over in a few minutes." As she worked at the override station, Sarah's fingers moved across the alien control interface with startling familiarity. The systems were complex, but she had trained extensively with captured galactic technology. More importantly, she had been given access to classified technical specifications that supposedly didn't exist in any human database. "How do you know our systems?" Morgath whispered, watching her navigate through security protocols that should have taken an expert hours to bypass. "Because someone made sure we were prepared," Sarah answered without looking up from her work. "Your Federation has been underestimating humanity since the day we made first contact." On the bridge, Captain Vexistar was experiencing the nightmare that every transport commander feared: complete loss of control over his own ship. The human prisoner had somehow disabled the internal communication system, knocked out primary surveillance in the engineering section, and was systematically shutting down defensive systems throughout the vessel. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from Federation Command," Lieutenant Chorus reported. The message was even more disturbing than the first. "Do not attempt to subdue prisoner HC-739 by force. Maintain minimum safe distance. Federation Special Response Team will handle containment upon arrival." Vextar's mandibles clicked with frustrated anger. They're treating this like she's some kind of weapon of mass destruction. Not a single human female. "Perhaps," Lieutenant Chorus said carefully. "She is exactly that." The truth was more complex than either of them understood. Sarah Chen wasn't just a weapon system, she was a message. Her mission wasn't to escape or to harm the crew of the Zephyr's Edge. It was to demonstrate capabilities that humanity supposedly didn't possess, and to do so in a way that would force the Federation to acknowledge that their assumptions about Earth were catastrophically wrong. In the engineering section, Sarah completed the shutdown of the ship's automated defenses and turned her attention to the more delicate task of accessing the ship's navigation computer. This was the real reason she had needed to reach engineering. The Zephyr's Edge contained navigation data for several classified Federation military installations, information that Earth's intelligence services needed to complete a much larger operation. "You're not just escaping," Morgath realized, watching her work. "You're stealing military intelligence." "I'm collecting information that belongs to humanity," Sarah corrected. "Your Federation has been keeping secrets about threats in this sector, threats that directly affect Earth's security." She accessed the navigation computer's secure partition and began downloading files that detailed the locations and defensive capabilities of Federation installations throughout the Outer Rim territories. The data would be transmitted to a hidden relay satellite as soon as she reached an external communication array. But as she worked, Sarah became aware that something was wrong. The ship's engines had changed their harmonic frequency, and the vibrations through the hull suggested they were decelerating much faster than the normal approach to Kepler 442b would require. "We're being intercepted," she said, more to herself than to Morgath. The Arcturian engineer nodded grimly. "Federation Special Response Team. They've been tracking us for the last 2 hours. Sarah's fingers flew across the control interface as she accelerated her data extraction. The Special Response Team was the Federation's elite military unit, equipped with technology and training specifically designed to handle situations that conventional forces couldn't manage. If they were being deployed against a single human prisoner, it meant the Federation understood exactly who she was and what she represented. On the bridge, Captain Vexistar watched the tactical display as 3 sleek Federation warships emerged from hyperspace and took up formation around his transport vessel. The lead ship was the FSS Nemesis, a heavy cruiser equipped with enough firepower to reduce the Zephyr's edge to atomic particles. Captain Vexstar, came a transmission from the Nemesis. This is Commander Zarthek of the Federation Special Response Team. You will immediately cease all propulsion and prepare for boarding. Do not attempt to communicate with or approach prisoner HC-7739. Vexstar opened a channel to respond, but found that his communication systems had been locked out from engineering. Somehow, the human prisoner had taken control of his ship's external communications, leaving him unable to coordinate with the Federation forces. In engineering, Sarah was putting the finishing touches on her mission. The navigation data had been successfully extracted and was ready for transmission. More importantly, she had planted subtle modifications in the ship's computer systems that would provide Earth's intelligence services with ongoing access to Federation communications in this sector. What happens now? Morgath asked quietly. Sarah looked at him thoughtfully. Now I disappear, and you tell everyone that a single human managed to infiltrate your ship, disable your defenses, and steal classified military intelligence without harming any of your crew. They'll never believe it, the engineer protested. They'll have to believe it, Sarah replied. Because it will have happened. She moved to the external communication array and transmitted a brief coded signal to the hidden relay satellite. Within seconds, the stolen navigation data was racing through hyperspace toward Earth, where it would be analyzed and integrated into humanity's growing understanding of galactic military capabilities. Then Sarah did something that caught Morgath completely off guard. She began stripping out of her prisoner clothing, revealing a sophisticated environmental suit that had somehow been concealed beneath the simple fabric. The suit was unlike anything the engineer had ever seen, incorporating technology that seemed to blend human engineering with principles that shouldn't have been known to Earth scientists. How long have you been planning this? He whispered. Sarah checked the suit's systems one final time. Longer than you might think. Humanity has been preparing for possibilities that your Federation doesn't know exist. She moved to an external maintenance hatch and began the cycle to open it. The engineering section's emergency protocols immediately activated, sealing the area and pressurizing the compartment to prevent catastrophic decompression. You can't survive in space, Morgath shouted. That suit isn't rated for vacuum exposure. Sarah smiled at him through the helmet's transparent faceplate. You'd be surprised what human technology can survive these days. The hatch opened and she stepped into the void between stars as calmly as if she were walking through a doorway. Commander Zarthek of the FSS Nemesis had seen many impossible things during his 40 years of service with the Federation Special Response Team, but watching a human being survive unprotected exposure to the vacuum of space still managed to surprise him. His bridge crew stared at their sensor displays in stunned silence as Sarah Chen maneuvered through the void, using some kind of propulsion system that their instruments couldn't fully analyze. Sir, her suit is definitely not standard galactic technology, reported the tactical officer, a nervous reptilian named Keswick. The power signature doesn't match any known environmental system. Zarthek, a massive Krillian with battle scars covering his chitinous armor, studied the readings with growing concern. How long has she been exposed to vacuum? 17 minutes and counting, came the reply. Sir, that's well beyond the survival limits for any known humanoid species, even with advanced life support. The commander activated the ship's external cameras and focused them on the small figure drifting between the vessels. Sarah Chen was moving with purpose, using what appeared to be micro-thrusters built into her suit to navigate toward a specific coordinate in space. She wasn't trying to reach any of the Federation ships, which suggested she had an alternative extraction plan. Scan for any unidentified vessels in this system, Zarthek ordered. Extended range, full spectrum. The results came back negative, but the commander wasn't satisfied. His experience had taught him that humans were developing a disturbing tendency to possess capabilities that didn't appear in any Federation database. If this woman had somehow gotten into space, there had to be a way for her to get out of it. On the Zephyr's edge, Captain Vextar was dealing with his own crisis. His ship's computer systems had been comprehensively compromised, leaving him with minimal control over basic functions. Worse, the modifications Sarah had made were so sophisticated that his engineering team couldn't figure out how to reverse them. "She's turned our own ship into a surveillance platform," Chief Engineer Morgath reported grimly. "Every transmission we make, every system we access, it's all being monitored and recorded by programs I don't even understand." Lieutenant Chorus looked up from his station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the escaped prisoner." The main view screen activated, showing Sarah Chen floating in space with the star field behind her. Her environmental suit was functioning perfectly, and she appeared completely comfortable despite being surrounded by the lethal vacuum of space. "Captain Vextar," she said, her voice clear despite the impossible circumstances. "I want to thank you and your crew for the transportation. No one was harmed during my departure, and I've left your life support and navigation systems fully functional." Vextar found his voice after a moment of shocked silence. "What are you? How is any of this possible?" Sarah's expression was visible through her helmet's faceplate, and there was something almost sympathetic in her eyes. "I'm what humanity becomes when we're allowed to reach our potential, Captain. Your Federation has been treating Earth like a primitive world that stumbled into galactic society by accident. That was a mistake. The Federation will never let this stand," Commander Zarthek interjected, his transmission cutting into the conversation. "You've committed acts of espionage against sovereign military installations. There will be consequences." "There already are consequences," Sarah replied calmly. "Your intelligence services know about the Void Hunters. They know about the extragalactic threats that are moving toward this sector, and they've been keeping that information from the newer species in the Federation. Humanity deserves to know what's coming." The mention of Void Hunters sent a chill through both bridge crews. The Void Hunters were a theoretical threat, whispered about in the highest levels of Federation command but never officially acknowledged. They were supposed to be extragalactic entities that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. "How do you know about classified threat assessments?" Zarthek demanded. "Because Earth has been conducting its own investigations," Sarah answered. "We've been preparing for threats that the Federation doesn't want to admit exist. The navigation data I extracted from this ship will help us continue those preparations." She checked something on her suit's display. "My extraction window is opening. Before I leave, I want to make something clear to both crews. This mission was a demonstration. Humanity isn't asking for permission to defend ourselves anymore. We're informing you that we intend to do whatever is necessary to protect our species and our allies." On the bridge of the Nemesis, sensors suddenly detected a massive spatial distortion, forming approximately 50,000 kilometers away from their position. The distortion was unlike anything in Federation records, a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to bend space-time around itself. "What is that?" Keswick whispered. Commander Zarthek had seen many advanced technologies during his career, but this was something entirely new. The energy patterns were consistent with theoretical research into artificial wormhole generation, technology that was supposedly centuries beyond current galactic capabilities. A ship emerged from the distortion, and it was like nothing anyone on either bridge had ever seen. The vessel was clearly of human design, but it incorporated engineering principles that suggested Earth's technology had advanced far beyond what the Federation believed possible. The ship was sleek and predatory, with hull plating that seemed to absorb sensor sweeps rather than reflect them. "Stealth frigate UES Shadow's Edge," Sarah announced. "Right on schedule." The human vessel moved toward Sarah's position with fluid grace, its propulsion system producing almost no detectable signature. As it approached, a section of the hull opened to reveal a small hangar bay, perfectly sized to accommodate a single person in an environmental suit. "This isn't possible," Captain Vextar muttered. "Humans don't have interstellar naval vessels. Earth's Space Force consists of system patrol craft and orbital platforms." Sarah smiled as the Shadow's Edge maneuvered into position. "That's what we wanted you to believe, Captain. Humanity has been building a deep space fleet for the last 8 years. Ever since our intelligence services discovered evidence of the Void Hunter incursions in the Andromeda sector." She activated her suit's thrusters and began moving toward the extraction point. The navigation data I collected will help us identify Federation installations that might be vulnerable to Void Hunter attacks. We're going to defend this sector, whether the Federation wants our help or not. Commander Zarthek watched in frustrated amazement as Sarah reached the human ship and was smoothly retrieved into its hangar bay. His weapon systems were fully charged and ready, but something held him back from ordering an attack. The Shadow's Edge represented technology that could revolutionize space warfare, and destroying it might eliminate humanity's best chance of defending against the threats he knew were coming. "Sir, should we pursue?" Keswick asked. The commander studied the tactical display. The human vessel was already charging its exotic propulsion system, preparing to disappear back into whatever dimensional fold had brought it here. More importantly, his orders from Federation Command had been very specific. Observe and report, but do not engage unless directly threatened. "Negative," Zarthek said finally. "Let them go." As the Shadow's Edge began to fade from normal space, Sarah's voice came over the communication channel one last time. "Commander Zarthek, Captain Vexitar, Chief Engineer Morgath, remember what you've seen here today. Humanity isn't the junior partner in this galaxy anymore. We're the species that's going to save it." The human ship vanished into its artificial wormhole, leaving the 3 Federation vessels alone in space with the implications of what they had witnessed. Captain Vexitar stared at the empty coordinates where the Shadow's Edge had been, trying to process the reality that Earth possessed technology that shouldn't have existed. "Sir," Lieutenant Chorus said quietly, "what do we tell Federation Command?" Vexitar considered the question carefully. The truth was almost too incredible to believe, but the evidence was undeniable. A single human operative had infiltrated his ship, disabled his defenses, stolen classified military intelligence, and escaped using technology that redefined what was possible in this galaxy. "We tell them exactly what happened," he said finally. "We tell them that we underestimated humanity, and that mistake could cost us everything." In the hangar bay of the Shadow's Edge, Sarah Chen was removing her environmental suit and preparing her mission debrief. The operation had been a complete success, but she knew it was only the beginning. The navigation data she had extracted would help Earth's growing fleet prepare for the threats that were already moving through the dark spaces between galaxies. Captain Maria Santos, the commanding officer of the Shadow's Edge, reviewed the preliminary intelligence reports with satisfaction. "How long before the Federation realizes what we're really doing?" Sarah considered the question. "They'll figure out that we've been preparing for the Void Hunters within a few months. The real question is whether they'll try to stop us or ask for our help. And if they try to stop us," Sarah's expression hardened, "then they'll discover that we've learned a lot more than just space warfare technology.